Tensions flared dramatically in central London this afternoon as Metropolitan Police officers moved in on a protest organized by Palestine Action. The intervention came shortly after demonstrators began chanting the politically charged slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," a phrase that has sparked fierce debate over its interpretation and implications. Eyewitnesses described scenes of chaos as officers formed lines and began charging into the crowd, dispersing hundreds of activists who had gathered to protest British arms exports to Israel and the continued presence of weapons manufacturers like ERUPTS systems on UK soil. Videos circulating on social media show officers using batons and physical force to push back protesters, some of whom attempted to lock arms and resist removal. The protest, which had initially begun peacefully outside a government-linked site associated with defense contracts, quickly escalated after the chant was taken up en masse. While supporters of Palestine Action defend the phrase as a call for Palestinian liberation and an end to occupation, critics, including senior government officials, have labeled it anti-Semitic and inflammatory, claiming it implies the eradication of the State of Israel. This marks the latest in a series of confrontations between Palestine Action and law enforcement, as the group continues to escalate its campaign across Britain in the wake of Israel's military actions in Gaza. The protest movement has drawn growing support among young activists and segments of the British left, even as it faces increasing scrutiny from politicians across the aisle. While no official arrests have been confirmed at the time of reporting on, the ground footage suggests several individuals were detained amid the police surge. Protesters could be heard shouting "Shame on you" at officers while legal observers were seen taking notes and filming interactions. The incident comes at a time of heightened political sensitivity around the Israel-Palestine conflict, with public opinion in the UK deeply polarized. The Labour Party, under Keir Starmer, has faced internal divisions over its stance on Gaza, while pro-Palestinian protests across the country have continued to draw thousands. At present, the area around the protest site remains cordoned off, with police maintaining a heavy presence and forensics teams arriving to assess damage to the targeted building. As night falls on London, the question now turns to what the government's response will be, and whether the public backlash against today's events will further fuel the fire of a movement that shows no signs of quieting.
Zia Youssef, this policy, have you been told to do it by donors?
Look, we've worked really hard on this policy, and what it's going to do is make Britain attractive again to the wealth creators, to the job creators, to people who are fleeing this country or not here in this country currently. What we're saying is a Prime Minister Nigel Farage and a reform government will make the United Kingdom attractive to the world's wealthiest job creators, but they must pay their fair share. So they'll pay £250,000 landing tax, and for that they get a Britannia card, which means that they don't pay tax on their foreign earnings. They still pay significant taxes here in the UK. And here's the crucial part. All of that money will be pulled by HMRC at the end of the tax year, and within 90 days of the end of the tax year, they will wire a special dividend to the lowest 10% of earning full-time workers in this country. That's about 2.5 million people. That's waitresses in Cardiff. That's care home workers in Ashfield. These are people who set their alarm clocks. You've got to be in full-time work. These are people who have been up against it, and they've been soaked by successive chancellors. So these are people who are not currently in the country, who are going to voluntarily pay this tax. And we've had great feedback already. There's a website up and running where people can register their interest. There's already a lot of interest there. But they're people who also love Britain. And so all I'm saying is we need a prosperous Britain again. That's what Nigel will deliver as Prime Minister. But we also need to repair the social contract in this country.
So how much will you give individuals? £1,000 per worker every year?
So at the low end of our forecast, and they're all here in this document if people fancy reading about it, the low end of our forecast, around 6,000 of these cards will be issued each year. At the higher end, 10,000. If we come in at the lower end, that'll mean a £600 tax-free payment directly into the bank accounts, not lost into, the ether in Whitehall and spent on all wokery and nonsense. We'd much rather British workers, grafters, had that money, £600. At the higher end, it'll be £1,000. It could even be more, Chris, depending on how successful it is. We've had great feedback from such people already. And I want to say this too, a lot of the reason, I mean, that £600 is a month's rent in Runcorn, for example, right? As I said, my own mother, she's over 70 now, she still works full-time as a nurse. She would be the kind of person who would benefit from this. And they're seeing their energy bills skyrocket, not actually due to market failure, but because of state failure, for example. And they're seeing the cost of their weekly shop go up. There's a cost of living crisis in this country. So what we're saying is, let's invite the world's wealthiest, the people with the broadest shoulders, who will contribute significantly to the tax stream and ensure that the lowest paid workers in this country share it.
And roughly what are those lowest paid workers on? What kind of income level are they on to receive them?
So it's generally, if you are watching this and you're in full-time work and you're earning less than £23,000 a year, you will benefit from this program. As I said, that will be calculated at the end of each tax year. And what's really interesting is generally these people will come and they'll set up shop in central London, in the jazzier parts of central London. The people who will benefit most from this are people in Wales, people in Scotland, people in the north of England.
It's a bit confusing. So a sense that they don't pay tax till they earn more than 13,000, I think, is the threshold. But then they get money back if they're under 23,000. It's a bit of a giving money, taking away again, isn't it?
Well, what we want to do was create a system and a program that was really easy to understand and really easy to administer. Right? Unlike other parties, when we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. So to make it easy for people, we will make sure that money is paid directly into people's bank accounts. I'd also say this: hopefully we'll get more than 10,000 of these cards issued each year. I mean, for context, if you look at this population that we're talking about, this sort of non-dom population, that was at around 140,000 in this country in 2008. Within 15 years, that has fallen to below 70,000. So we think it could even be more than that.
Do you worry that bosses might game the system? They know that the government will come in for those paid less than 23,000, so they'll keep wages depressed, knowing that the government will make the tally up.
That's just not how markets work. If you're a boss who tries to do that, you just won't have good staff. I will say this too, this is for full-time workers. Reform is on the side of people who set their alarm clocks in the evening and rise early in the morning to go and graft. And what this also does, I mean, some of the questions from the press today were talking about incentives. Let's talk about the incentive for someone who's on benefits to actually get back and start working, because those people are probably going to start, Chris, in the bracket that we're talking about. So it's going to end up taking people off benefits, putting them into work and making work pay, which is something that hasn't been the case, frankly, in this country for decades.